You were one of the few that participated in this.
Yeah, that was
Let's
a biggie.
talk about this.
That was a biggie.
Now, Phil Grant organized this because
Yeah.
he was tight with Goldstein at Birdland.
That's right.
What were those like? Tell me about that.
They were lovely. I mean, those were like, to me, they were like high points.
For the
of my
record, we're
career.
talking about Gretsch Drum Night at Birdland. That's not going to be on the tape because all I did was just hold up the album. So just for the tape's sake.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I was just thrilled. That's the thing I can remember most about that night. And those nights were just thrilled and proud to be one of the drummers, to be part of all that.
Brilliant performance.
And I felt that I belonged there, but at the same time, I was still very humble about who I was with, and it was great to have that pushing you, to make you really want to play. And I think I played fairly well under those circumstances.
Incredible. Incredible. You were right there with the other three guys, man. As far as I'm concerned, it was just...
And, the nice thing about that was that I think that, when you get drummers together, or for that matter, any group of people that do the same thing, there's going to be, and you're competing, there's going to be the competitive ego. It's got to be there. I think that's all part of what makes it work. As long as it doesn't get carried away in that.
And Phil said it never did. He said it never got out of hand.
That's right. I mean, we all had our little competitive egos going on, but at the same time, we were aware of trying to make music on the instrument. And Art wanted to make sure that we played something together, and he was the one that he hummed that thing that we all did together. And I think it was one of his pet rhythms. And we all, we played, and that was really the theme. That was the theme.
Which one was that on?
Let's see.
Now there's 2 albums, so it might not be on.
Oh yeah, this is like.
That's the first album. Then they have a second one that came after that.
I'm trying to remember this. I don't even know. Now let's talk about Peaches. Is this all part of the Gretsch Night at Birdland?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. I think that they.
Like I said, there's 2 albums. That's the first one, and it might be on the other album, what you're thinking of.
Yeah, this is.
This has been re-released, by the way, on the CD. They just re-released this on CD. So Blakey was kind of the organizer as far as the music.
Yes,
Art was kind of in charge.
Art, yes, band 3. Art Blakey leads the drum ensemble. All 3 drummers playing together, which act as a fill-in for the typical offhand sporadic style of Elton John solo. The ensemble of 3 drum playing repeatedly fill-in for Charli Persip solo. The drum ensemble is guaranteed in a lot of the full-time that yeah. See, this is the band 3, 4, and 5 is when we're just the drummers.
Right.
Now these things with other musicians, I don't remember them at all.
Some great stuff.
Oh yeah, but that really got by me.
Some great stuff.
I would like to hear, because I didn't know that was happening. I just remember, like this thing with the drummers playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would like to. I've got this home. Someone out to school.
So how did it feel when you were, going on stage with these 3 guys? You had some pretty incredible drummers you were playing with there.
It was.
And I know Philly was one of your mentors.
Well, they were all my mentors to a certain degree, and at the same time, I felt that I was on the level with them, But I felt I was on the level with great respect to how great they were, and so it was kind of a mixed feeling, It was like you could say frightened to some degree, To some degree, there's going to be some fright there, But you don't allow it to intimidate you because you still, at the same time, have the confidence in what you can do. Yeah. So it was that. That's where my head was, at the time. Frightened, but at the same time confident. thrilled, very, very happy, champing at the bit, worried whether I would drop a stick or do something stupid, the whole bit.
You were normal.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But I remember that through all of those different mental ups and downs, I remember it as being like one of the thrills of my life. And also at that particular time, I was like really very popular in Birdland for some reason. Oscar Goodstein, the whole the Birdland people liked me. They took to me. And, I did some Monday nights there when I first formed my own group. I did some Monday nights there. And, so, they were all kind of pulling for me, man, because, here, like I said, Elvin and I at that time were like the new kids on the block. And Elvin was kind of like standoffish. Elvin at that time was not, he hadn't really nailed his style to the point of where he could push it at you. He was in the process of doing that then. So if you listen to Elvin, you do not hear the wild, mad bull of the pampas that you hear like when he went with John Coltrane. Right. But you can hear the concept. You can hear where he was going, where he was coming from. But Elvin's thing was not as the other three of us.
Let me read some names to you here. And like I said, if nothing comes to mind, that's fine, and I'll just move on to the next one. And these are just more or less in chronological order. Billy Gladstone. You ever had any experience with him?
Not a one.
Okay.
But I do respect his book. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, he's the one who made the pad.
Right.
The snare drum.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
Played at Radio City.
Right.
Quite a drummer.
What's the guy's name that made that did the book on syncopation?
Ted Reed.
Ted Reed, right. Oh yeah, we move on. Because Gladstone I never knew at all.
Chick Webb. You were too young for him.
Too young for Chick. Just a little too young for Chick Webb. But I've heard some things on record, and I've heard the things that he did, and I heard about, So just what little that I heard on record, I could tell he was a monster.
Joe Jones.
And man, what can you say about Papa Joe? Papa Joe was perfect. He really learned how to make talent and bullshit work. Yeah. He really did.
That ought to go on the cover of the book. That's the best line I've heard about Papa Joe. That pretty well sums it up.
Yeah, he was one of a kind. He was show business, man. He smiled and made it work because at the same time he was talented. So he made the two things work. Because what he may have lacked, he more than made up for with bullshit. But he didn't lack that much to start with. So, and what he had that wasn't bullshit was so powerful. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I say, he made it work, man. He's one of a kind, man. And Philly like came right along, more or less like behind him. But of course with the hip modern approach. Papa Joe's rhythmic concept was, kind of like into the 30s, 40s, like the swing era. But he was able to make his style work with the early bebop though, as you know. But when you hear Papa Joe, you won't hear the licks, the slickness, the offbeat stuff that Philly played. That's what made Philly. So, but Papa Joe, man, Maxwell used to refer to him as sire. Yeah, sire. Like
Sire?
the king. Like
really?
The king. Yeah,
I never heard that expression.
Oh yeah. He used to. Max had a lot to do with Papa Joe. In his later years, like try to help him. Because Papa, as great as he was, kind of. I don't know what the reason for, but he kind of almost wasted away. If it hadn't been for people that loved him, and kind of came to his aid, he probably would have wasted away even worse than he did. But even as it was, But Papa, I mean, he tell it like it was, and as he got older, he was, he was very caustic, and as he got older, and he was angrier, and his points were well taken. I mean, the things that made him angry they make me angry for that matter,
Like,
racism, I mean, that's like a biggie, because we were really the recipient, and still are the recipient of some very terrible treatment, when you come to talking about the way human beings, should be treated. And it eats a lot of us up. It eats a lot of us up, and Papa, as he got older, I mean, what he saw and what he experienced, just started eating him up, he started speaking out, and he drank, and naturally, you drink and your tongue gets loose, and, little by little. And of course, by doing this, he was getting older, and so he was getting less competitive, the beat goes on, the youth started coming up, and it's kind of sad. He's like almost like the athlete, like Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, they fight past their prime, and then you have to watch them, deteriorate, and that was kind of sad about Papa. I had a very cheerful experience with him. For me, Papa liked me, for a long time. I was like one of his favorite, and he wouldn't allow. He wouldn't let on to that. Matter of fact, he was like the kind of person that treated you worse if he liked you. And right, and so because of this, I always thought that Papa Joe hated me, because every time I would be in his company, he would lace into me, man, and I would grin and bear it, like out of respect and love for him. But little by little, it was starting to get on my nerves, But but I still loved him so much, and what he meant to the drums. And then when I went to see him play, then naturally, I mean, I saw his greatness, but then I also saw what I didn't see and what I would like in a drummer as well, but with all due respect, And but anyway, one day, Modern Drummer, I had done a couple of articles for Modern Drummer. They used to have an area called Driver's Seat in the Modern Drummer magazine, and they had like drummers writing articles. And I wrote a couple that they published they liked. So then we came up with the idea of me doing an article on Papa Joe, like one drummer talking to another, different eras, but close enough so there would be a relationship. They thought it was a good idea at the time. So they told me to go ahead with it. Papa Joe was incorrigible, man. He was the heart. I went up to see him, and we set up the tape. And then he would turn the records on and play them so loud. And I said, man, if you don't want me to oh yeah, come on, let's, I mean, he was cooperative and uncooperative at the same time. I was flattered that he wanted to do this, that he felt that way, about it. And so it became like a very warm experience. And it was great for me because, as I said, I always thought the man hated me. And so little by little we talked. So we ended up getting a fairly decent interview over a period of time. But it took so long, and many discarded rolls of tape, I would bring tape home, play it back, and you would hear him belching and farting, and this loud music, and every now and then you hear him say something that's unintelligible.
Right.
So, but it gave me a chance to visit with him every day.
Right.
So what I did, I took some notes. I wrote some things where, if I asked him a question, we talked about something, and I didn't get a productive answer on the tape, I would take some notes and just write it down.
Right.
So I finally ended up with a pair of these articles. By then, Modern Drummer had become disenchanted with the idea. For some reason or other, I don't know, something happened. I don't quite remember now, but they did. I don't know whether they thought it was too long, or there was something about it that they didn't want to be bothered with. And I think that they bought it from me because I had, they respected the time that I put in to do it, and they took the manuscripts, and I got paid like the prescribed amount of money, but they told me up front that it probably would never be published, and so I guess it might still be in their archives.
That would be a tearful experience to go through all that.
But what I'm getting to, what made the experience tearful for me was that when we finished, Robin Flans. It was either him or Rick. What's the guy named Rick? It was either Robin or Rick. Took the pictures. They took the pictures. And that's when he still had the place on 64th Street. So they came over to take the pictures. So Papa got all his memorabilia, all this stuff out, and he really prepared to, and he was like kind of ill then too. I mean, he was really like on his way down. And he had all his memorabilia out. And he was showing it to me, and of course, naturally, he's got some nice things because he's a great man, And I started getting kind of sad, like seeing all this stuff, and I'm seeing this man, I'm thinking the last time I was out to Shelley's house, man, like out in the Redondo Beach, he's like, with the horses and the whole Hollywood bit, and here I am with this legendary man, and this, like, kind of funky little apartment, man,
Where was the apartment you said it was on?
It was on East 64th Street. It was in a nice area. It was on the east side, middle east side. But this particular building was one of the older buildings. It was not what you would expect. It was done. It was well kept. It was clean. It wasn't a ghetto building.
But it should have been more.
Oh man, are you kidding? And here living by himself. This little unkept little 4-room, which caught fire.
Right.
So I started feeling kind of bad about that. Anyway, make a long story longer, we took the pictures and everything, and then Rick, it was either Rick or Robert, I don't remember. They left it, so I was, Pop was, getting this, stuff together, getting ready to, somebody was coming to take him to dinner or something like that, and I said, well, okay, Pop, I'm out of here. I said thanks for everything. I really enjoyed it, and so he reached up on the shelf. There were 2 little white boxes, and he handed me the one. He said, what do you think of that? It was something that I hadn't seen of all of his memorabilia. And I opened it up, and it was this big gold commemorative coin. Now, I don't know whether it's solid. It's heavy enough. It could be solid gold, or it might be gold plated. But what it is, have you ever seen a cymbal, before it's rolled out? It's like a lump of metal about the size of a hockey puck. Right. Well, this was about the size of maybe a large dollar, a silver dollar, and much thicker. It was actually a symbol, and it probably was gold plated, and it had Zildjian's likeness on one side. It was a commemorative gold coin made of symbol from Zildjian, and on one side it said, like to the greatest drummer in the world. And so I said, yeah, it's really great, man, And it doesn't have his name. It just says to the greatest drummer in the world, And I gave it back to him, and he said, no. He said, man, and he put the coin in my hand and he said, that's yours.
Wow.
And that really, it took me a long time. I had to really fight the tears back, Because I'm one of those stupid crybabies who think that men should not cry. And so every time that I give in to crying, which I have done, I've always hated myself. I feel like such a stupid wimp. But I mean, it really got to me because all of these years, man, I'm thinking this man hated me.
Wow.
And I knew that he respected my drumming. I knew that because Papa was the kind of person, if he didn't like the way you played, he wouldn't talk to you at all. I mean, he wouldn't waste no time hating you or liking you. He just didn't exist as far as he was concerned. So I knew that he respected my playing.
You took one of his gigs.
More or less, yeah.
Philly Joe was playing?
Yep. Yeah, that was his show. But I didn't know that. I didn't know I was taking his gig. All I know is the people, the guy took me to Union Man, took me over to the club. I tried out, did the rehearsal, and they said, great, man.
You were just supposed to be a temp, right? Until Papa came in.
Right, but I started getting into the show. And naturally, I'm sure they got me a lot cheaper than they got Papa. And they paid me very well. I mean, the money, that's some of the best money I've made during that time. I was great. I bought a new car, from that gig, you know, because I played the whole summer, you know. And that upped my economy, you know, greatly. But I'm sure they would, you know, they were going to pay Papa more. And yeah, I didn't know anything about Papa. All I know is that these people asked me to do this gig, and after I did it opening night, and at the end of the night, Tad and Senor, who was the producer of the show.
What are their names again?
Tad Dameron, who was the leader of the band. And Senior, they called him Senior. His name was Clarence Robinson. He was the producer of the show.
Oh, okay.
It was the Clarence Robinson Tropicana Review. So, and the owner of the club, I think his name was Fields, Joe Fields, I think that was. He was the owner. This was the club is now defunct. It's a club in Atlantic City. It was called the Paradise. At that particular time, in the 50s, there were three major clubs in Atlantic City. The 500 Club, that's where Frank Sinatra and the big white acts played. And then there were two clubs that featured, you know, like the top black acts, and occasionally a white act, and that was the Club Harlem and the Paradise, and they were like in competition. Club Harlem actually had the edge as far as the reputation, but the Paradise was right on the heel. So the owner of the club, Clarence Robinson, the producer, and Tad Dameron, the arranger and band leader, got together about me. And because this was a big show, it was a big review, a lot of money had been spent on it. Betty Carter was the headliner, man, you know. And so they got together, and Tad said, they asked Tad, what did he think about the way that I played the show? Did they think that I would work out for the rest of the summer? And Tad said, yeah. And so they asked the producers, so, how are the dancers, are they comfortable with this drum? And Clarence said, yeah. So Joe Fields and club owner asked me, said, would you like to do for the rest of the summer? I said, yeah.
Everybody's saying yeah, except Papa. And he came in, as I understood, and had his arms folded and just kind of glared at you.
Yeah, I didn't know anything
but
about it. But
he was happy that a young man got it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Papa didn't really need that. I mean, he might not have even stayed there, though. He might have just went down there. He might have done an interim thing until they could have gotten somebody. Right. But this was one of those kind of shows where it wasn't anybody could do it. You know, I mean, it was somebody like Papa Joe. I mean, because it was, Philly Joe more or less set the precedent. The show was built around Tad Dameron's music and the kind of music that bebop, you know, slick drumming, that was part of the music. Right. And the show, the dance routines, it was all built around that. Because Philly, they put that show together just the way a Broadway show is put together. They were like in rehearsal 3 or 4 months before they opened, you know, because it's going to run all summer. Atlantic City had a major club. And, so Philly had made all the rehearsals, and Philly was a monster drummer, you know, and the dancers, as a matter of fact, he was going with one of the dancers in the show. They had like a little romance going. So, Philly had that thing wrapped up. You know, and like I was like, that's another thing that like I was like really, really nervous. Because I said, man, you know, Philly Joe Jones. And I went to see the show when Philly was playing it. But it was beautiful. It was some great music, man. When I got into it, man, it was. Once I got over the like the concentration, you know, and started like kind of relaxing to really hear it, man. We had some great nights. I used to run to the gig, you know. I actually ran, you know, like from all day long. I was thinking about, you know, getting to the gig that night, man. Wow. You know, just run to the gig. Wow. Yeah. So Papa came that weekend. And I still did not know the story. All I knew is that one of the people came backstage and said there were some musical dignitaries in the audience. And I said it was Joe Jones and Chris Colombo, who was, leading a trio at the Harlem Club at that time in the lounge. He legendary drummer. He was Sonny Payne's like step type father, surrogate father. And they were in the audience together. And when the curtain opened, you know, the drums were sitting out front, you know, and the dancers danced. There were like a couple of numbers where the dancers danced around the drums. You know, really hit, man. And I might add that I also fucked my brains out during that summer, man. Yeah. I really fucked my brains out. Because, you know, shows like that, For some reason, the dancers and drummers seem to be some kind of an attraction. I married a dancer as well. You know, my wife's a dancer.
Sophie was a dancer?
Yeah, she's a dancer.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, she danced in that same club.
It all began.
Yeah, not that year, but
all began. Small world, huh?
yeah. So yeah, it was quite a summer, man. It was quite a summer. And I joined Dizzy right after that. Right. I went from that to Dizzy. But that was it. Papa Jones, like I'm glad it wasn't opening night. I probably would have fainted. But this is like, you know, I had been playing the show for a couple of days. You know, I kind of had it when we were together. And I looked out in the audience, and there they were, you know, sitting there, like damn near to the stage. You know, thank God for tilted cymbals.
You can always hide behind them.
Hide behind the cymbal. But that's what happened with Papa Jones.
How about O'Neill Spencer?
I never knew him.
Okay. Nick Patul.
Never knew him. I knew of him, but I never knew him.
Dave Tuff.
Never knew him either. I was very aware of Dave, and I would have liked to have known him, man, you know, because I've heard so much about him, and the things I heard and the way he played on the Woody Herman band, I really would have liked to, you know.
Alberto Calder.
I never knew
Played with Cougar.
Yeah, no, I didn't get that.
Shelley Mann.
Shelley, yeah, I got to know Shelley.
Okay.
Later on in his life, I got, you know, one time when I joined Dizzy, then the drummers who were popular at that time, that's when I met most of them. Well, you know, once I joined Dizzy, you know, during that time.
Right. How about a guy by the name of Dick Shanahan? Played with Charlie Barnett?
I met Dick. He was playing with a lounge act, and I don't know if it was before or after the band, but that's when I met him. But you know, I mean, we talked, and but we never got, like, you know, I mean, I just, you know, our lifestyle never got us close enough, you know, a long enough time in the same place to get tight. But what I remember of it was a nice conversation, you know.
How about George Wetling?
Never got to know him either.
I know this one, Kenny Clark.
Oh yeah, Kenny Clark is the one that
Let's
talked me into getting married.
Is that right?
So Kenny and I, of all the drummers, I think that I became closer to Kenny. I was, you know, I'm very good friends with Max Rhodes and very good friends with Art Blakey. I'm very good friends with all of the major drummers. And when I say very good friends, I mean we actually hung out together and spent time together as friends, not only just drummers.
Right.
But Kenny Clark, for some reason or other, it was like a warmer thing. Kenny, when I first came to New York and played Birdland, Kenny used to come down every night, you know. And a lot of times he would be working around the corner, because that's when the Basin Street was around the corner from Birdland. And they were like kind of vying with Birdland as far as, you know, competition. And they had like name acts, you know, for a short while in the 50s, like the mid 50s. And Kenny played there a lot. Mm-hmm. So, and then when he wasn't playing there, he would come by Birdland all the time. So he would come like almost every night and take me for a ride. And he would tell me about Dizzy and tell me about, you know, he was like my uncle, you know, like big brother or something. Like, as a matter of fact, he used to tell all the vultures, you know, when you know, because, you know, like at that time, you know, the pimps, the hustlers, the dope dealers. I mean, it was done on a high class level, but it was still done.
It's still done.
You know, it was still done. You know, I was like basically considered a country boy. Like, I'm from Jersey, man. You know, so here I come to New York, the big thing in New York. You know, and the vultures were like licking their chops. You know, like licking their hand. So you know, and Kenny came down, you know, and he put his arm around me and said, "I'm not gonna let the vultures get you, man." You know. Oh yeah, and then plus he knew my wife very well, because my wife was a bebop fan, you know, and she used to go to all, you know, was a dancer, and she used to go to all the bebop sessions. She met the bebop, and I think her and Kenny may have even had like a little thing going. I don't know, but he spoke so well of her, man. And matter of fact, I remember, you know, he asked me one time. He said, "I hear you and Lil Sophie going together." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man," he said, "How you like her? What do you think?" I said, "Man, I think she's great, man." He said, "She is." He said, "Man," he said, you got a jewel there. He said, "What do you think about doing?" He said, "Are you thinking about getting married?" I said, "You know what? Yeah." I said, "I have really thought about marrying her, man." He said, "Well, if you're thinking that way," he said, "marry her." He said, "Go ahead." He said, "Marry." He said, "As a matter of fact," he said, "if you don't marry her, you will have grief." I'll never forget it for that, man. Those are his exact words, man. You know. And my wife and I will celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary this October.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
40
So,
years.
yeah.
That speaks a lot.
I remember Kenny Clark for that more than anything else.
Now, Don Lamont said he played Kenny Clark's drums because that's how he got involved with Gretsch. And he said, I couldn't play him because Kenny had his drums so loose.
Yeah, Kenny and Art Blakey had a way or two in their drums that was just really, it was hard to play. You know, but that's how they got that sound, that particular sound. And their chops worked for that kind of tension, you know, that kind of sound. But I know exactly what Don meant. Because Don likes it, you know, Don likes that sharp, get bang, bang, bang. You know the thing I remember about Don Lamont? Oh, are you going to talk about Don? Okay, we'll get there.
We'll get there. How about Shadow Wilson? Yeah.
That was my other big brother or uncle in town. Yeah. And Shadow, more or less, if I had to say the style that I'm playing now, like behind a big band, I would say that Shadow was the stimulating, the motivating factor in me playing the way I play in a big band. Shadow, Teddy Stewart, and Kenny Clark were like the biggest influences on me about the way to play in a big band. You know? And but Shadow above all, because Shadow had a way of playing in a big band where it sounded like he was playing in a small band. He had the same small band kind of sound, but yet he had enough power to deal with the big band, and that's the direction that I'm in. You know, like,
I saw that last night.
Yeah, wow.
That was wonderful. That was truly wonderful.
So glad you enjoyed it.
Oh, what you did was it just felt so good. It was just so right, you know, where Muhammad, when he played, he was a good drummer. And I'm going, wow, he's doing, but it didn't get to me inside. You know, it didn't fit. It stood out too much. It was too upfront. I was reading an article about Art Taylor, and Art Taylor said some drummers are rude. They get in other people's way.
Yeah.
Where your thing just fit. I mean, when you did something, it was like, oh, that's perfect. You couldn't have done anything else. I mean, what you did right there. So I imagine that's probably what you're saying about Shadow. I mean, that small band, and yet still being able to kick the big band.
Right. Well, and that's really kind of basically where I'm coming from style-wise. And it's, you know, as I say, Shadow was like the major stimulator of that. You know.
He died young, though, right?
No. He was a victim of the devils. You know, the people. Like I said, the people who were wringing their hands waiting for you to come, he was a victim. He fell victim to it, victimized. That's so sad, man. So
Great shot.
yeah, that's
Beautiful
that's
shot.
close to the way that I look. I mean, my hair is shorter now than it was then. But aside from that, that's basically the way I look now.
Great shot.
You know, it's an old picture. It was taken a few years ago. And I actually used I still have these same drums.
I saw it in this Modern Drummer.
Same drum.
Can I borrow this one?
I brought that one for you. You know, after you make the copies, can you mail it back to me?
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's the only copy of this that I have.
That's fine. Yeah, I got to put it in a computer.
Okay, and that will reproduce. Okay, I was wondering if it was a little dark.
No, that'll be fine.
Great.
Louis Bellson.
Oh, the Prince of a Man. Prince of a Man. We've already talked about what he did for me, and of course, another highlight of my career was something that just happened a couple of years ago. And do you know Jerry Ritchie, National Drum Association?
No.
I'm surprised that you're not familiar with that organization. They're in their own way. They're trying to do things for drummers, you know, and for the whole drum situation. And they gave a party and gave a tribute to Louis at the Vista Hotel.
He told me about it.
He told you about it, right? And it was just a couple of days before the bombing. Did he tell you that?
No.
You remember the big bombing that went off in the Vista?
Yeah.
That happened like a few days after we had that program. And the hotel and the room that we did that in is part of the structure, part of the thing that got damaged. Isn't that something? Isn't that something?
Yeah, he told me that. He said that you got up there on stage and he said you just tore him up. He said he did just some marvelous things up there.
Yeah, it was a good night, man.
It was all his arrangements, right?
Right. It was another thing. It was another one of those nights of was more, 6 drummers. and everybody going up showing what they could do. Lester Merle started it off with a great fanfare and the show of his technique and stuff. And Bush Miles. But I think Steve and I played the best music. Steve Gadd.
Okay.
And I was really kind of surprised. Steve, like, kind of, well, I guess he didn't need to, you know. I mean, Steve kind of like, he didn't play a lot, you know. But what he played, you know, just felt good. And I more or less kind of did the same thing, you know. Right now, this is what I like to try to demonstrate is the feeling that comes out of the drums. You know, I mean, if you have some chops and, you know, some technique, you use those chops just to make enough music, but you don't want the chops to be, you know, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to say, you know, there's a certain feeling that comes out of the instrument. If you can do it with chops, then it's fantastic, you know. But I like to get that feeling, you know, and that's what I look for. And then, of course, naturally, whatever else you can do on top of that, then it's even better, you know. But I sure enjoyed working, you know, the thing we did with Candido last night. You know, we did that at the last minute, man. You know, like we rehearsed Montague at the rehearsal. We had like one rehearsal, you know, before the performance, day before yesterday. And we rehearsed, and so we didn't really rehearse the solo part. You know, we just rehearsed like so the band would know what we're going to do. But the little bit of the solo part that we played at rehearsal, we did it with just like kind of like straight ahead, you know, like it was right at the same time as Montega, like kind of somber kind of thing, you know. And at the last minute, before we went on stage last night, Candido said, I think I'd rather play 6/8. You know, I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. So I said, no, I didn't mind, because I like 6/8 too,
Yeah,
you know.
but it was still.
And, but I'm just saying, like, it was like at the last minute. So it really came up quite well, you know, of how we went into it, you know.
What impressed me, Charlie, was what you were doing behind him made him sound so good.
Yeah.
And then later on, I don't want to put down on Muhammad. He was a great drummer.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, but Candido didn't sound as good as when you were behind him, you know, because of the things you were doing with him.
Right.
And it was just so. Oh.
Well, that's it. Yeah, we worked together. You know,
you worked together with him with Dizzy, right?
Yeah, he was with us for a while,
yeah.
but not all the time.
Right.
Well, Candy and I go back together a long time.
Yeah.
But you know, it's one of those things. You know, like we love each other, and it's about listening. And I'm like really into like multi-playing now. Anyway, I like the idea of drummers going back to playing with more drummers. I teach my classes that, and I think it helps us to be better accompanists. Because when you can play, you know, because here again, like I said, when you get 2 or 3 drummers together, then you got to deal with them ego. The drummer's ego. So the secret, man, is to listen. If you can listen and at the same time play. That's hard to do, because a lot of times you start listening and then so you don't listen to yourself.
Right.
And then thank you. And then you start listening to yourself and then you don't listen to who you're supposed to be playing with. So it's like a whole thing to perfect. It's a whole area of playing the instrument, you know, which is what I'm like deeply into now.
How about Denzel Best?
I got to know Denzel fairly well. We never really hung out. Denzel was one of those kind of friends that you see, you know, he would come to your gig, or I would come to his. But I don't think Denzel ever been to my house, and I've never been to his house. But we knew each other very well, and had a very mutual respect for one another. Yeah, Denzel and Denzel got so, you know, he was a heavy, you know, he drank a lot. It really is what caused his death. You know, I think he stepped off the curb, so he was very drunk and lost his balance. And he fell and cracked his head on the curbstone.
Yeah, it sounds just like Davy Tough, the same way. Davy died the same way.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
I heard there was something that had to do with drink.
Got drunk and
he fell
and busted his head on a curb.
No kidding.
Same story, man.
Wow. That's what happened to Denzel.
Wow.
At least that's what they said happened.
Huh.
Isn't that something?
How about Don Lamont?
Oh yeah, Don's another sweetheart.
Quite a character.
I know.
I had to do him by phone because he's down in Orlando.
Right.
I wouldn't have a chance.
Well, I got to know Don after I left Dizzy. I was very aware of his playing. I was a fan of his. I liked the way he played. especially that. Now I always remember he made like a little break on "Keeper of the Flame." That's the name of the tune. Woody Herman band. The band said ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. He said boom, ba ba ba. That's all it was, but it was like real Don Lemon. It was like the way he played was like that very sharp kind of playing, man. But he was great at that band, man. He was really, really great. I mean, Don was, you had to know how to play the bass drum in a big band. That's what made Don so, heavy. And for me, Dave Tuff, and Shadow and Kenny and Teddy Stewart, and the way that they dubbed the bass drum in.
Last night.
Yeah, the bass drum.
Last night, that's what I heard.
You lift the whole band up with that bass drum.
Yeah.
And the band says, pa-da-pa-pa-da-pa. And Don used to do that, man. But Don and I became friends more after I left Dizzy. We were both in the recording scene in New York. Don was like first call. I became like second call. I became like second call to Don and to O.C. Johnson. Don and O.C. were the two hot shots at that particular time. They got so much that between the two of them, being second call, between the two of them, I worked as much as they did.
A great period.
And then of course naturally the calls. I mean, whenever I did a record day, the contractors liked what I did so much, so like when some new people started coming in, I started becoming the first call into certain things. And it was like a nice little society there, and that's when Don and I became like really tight. And it was great then because, I mean, it was enough work so nobody got bugged because somebody was, nobody was no ego thing going on, right? And then Don moved out of town, and I didn't see Don anymore until I was Billy Eckstine's drummer. And we played, Billy Eckstine used to just carry drums and piano. And then we would put bands together or use the house bands wherever we went. And we played Disneyland, Disney World, yes, in Orlando. And Don had the band, he was the band leader and the drummer of the band. And I didn't know that, man, and he didn't know that I was with Billy. And so we got, we came into rehearsal that morning, we flew and got in town.
Now he was in Disneyland? His band was in Disneyland at the time?
Yeah, at the top of the hotel.
I didn't know that, okay.
Yeah, and so it was great, man. Like I walked in, man, and here Don was, and then he saw me, and yeah, it was really, really great. And we stay in touch. He was I helped him celebrate, I think it was his 70th birthday a few years ago.
He's still kicking around down there.
Yeah,
I had a great interview with
him. He had some work done on his back, and I understand he's walking better than he was before.
Yeah. How about Mel Lewis?
Yeah, Mel and I were good friends. I met Mel on the train when I was just joined Dizzy, and we were on our way to Buffalo, and Mel was on his way home. And Mel's from Buffalo, and he was on his way home. And we were on the same train, and we started talking, and that's how we got tight. And then we kind of stayed in touch with each other throughout our respective careers until he died. I talked to him a couple of days before he died. He wanted me to come over to the house. He said he had a little set of drums, because he still did some practicing, even though he was sick. He still, trying to play the drums. He was so pitiful.
How did he die? What was?
He had lung cancer.
Lung cancer.
Yeah. And he wasted away too, and it was a drag. I remember when he was first diagnosed. Oh yeah, and I remember when he was first diagnosed, and everybody was very upbeat about it. He was saying like he didn't have to take that much chemo. It was just like it was like the first stages and stuff like that, and they were very optimistic about his recovery, and it never happened. It never happened.
Great big band drummer.
Oh yeah, he was another one that really had the right thing for the big band.
There's what Phil Grant said about both Don Lemon and Mel Lewis. He said neither one of them were technical, but boy, they sure could kick a big band. Kick it all day long.
Right. Well, that was one of the things that Phil liked about me was the fact that I had some technique.
He said you had the
same
chop.
time.
Yeah.
At the same time.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Trying to kick the band.
Yeah.
Which is
That's great.
right there.
Art Blakey.
From my daddy.
Your daddy.
Yeah, my father.
The volcano is
what can I say about Art, man? I met Art. Naturally, I was a avid, rabid, ridiculous fan of his. As who wasn't when you hear that man play the drums?
Yeah.
Thunder and lightning,
Yeah.
fire and brimstone. And I was still in Newark. It was before I emerged. It was like 51, something like that. But I used to go to the clubs all the time, and I was playing rhythm and blues and stuff then, you know. So I was out, but I wasn't in the bebop world as yet, you know. And that's where I wanted to be, but I hadn't gotten there yet. And Art Blakey was booked to play his club in Newark. So I got there naturally when they were setting up. I wanted all of it. I wanted to get all of it. And I didn't know him, you know. And I was just standing there watching him, you know, getting this shit together. And his pedal broke. And he didn't have another pedal. And I immediately leaped on the bandstand and said, you can have my pedal. You can use my pedal. I'll go home and get it right now. And
where was this now?
in Newark, New Jersey, is where I'm from. You know.
What club? Do you remember what club this was?
Oh no, it might have been Lloyd's Manor, but most of those clubs now are defunct. It was just like it was the popular jazz nightclub of that era in Newark, New Jersey. And so I dashed home, man, you know, and I had my own car, drove home, got my pedal, brought it back, you know, and I was so honored and thrilled, man. And he played it, and he had it, and it was a good pedal because I believe in having good equipment. And as a matter of fact, that's how we got, and as we started talking about it, you know, he was thrilled with the pedal, and we got to talking, and he said, and he told me, he said, I bet you. He said, for some reason or other, man, he said, I think you can play your ass off. And he never heard me play. Nothing. We just first met. But the way that we rapped, you know. And sure enough, so when I came to New York with Dizzy band, and he came to hear the band, we became really. He was almost like another uncle. Only he didn't take me under his wing like the other guys did. He did it philosophically, not physically. Whenever he was with me, he would philosophize as if he was my father. But we never practiced together, nothing like that. We just always talked. He laid some beautiful stuff on me as far as like philosophies of music and histories and stuff like that. Like a father.
Here's some that you may not. Roy Hart.
No, I know of him, but I never got to know him.
Chuck Flores.
I knew Chuck very, very, very faintly. I mean, we spoke. You know, I mean, we knew each other. You know, right. But that was it.
Right. Sam Milano.
Oh, Sam! I studied. I didn't study with Sam, but I studied with one of teachers who studied with him and taught his method, Al Germansky, in Newark. And but I got to know Sam really very well.
Quite a character.
Yeah, one of as a matter of fact, the first drum clinic I ever did was one with Sam, Elvin and I have the pictures on it. Elvin Jones and myself.
Wow.
Yeah, it was right there in the 50s. Sam Milano was the first drum clinic.
Elvin Jones, you talked a little bit about
Elvin's like a brother. And Elvin had a lot to do with helping me to shed intimidation, helping me to get away from being intimidated by what musicians wanted from the drummer. I got so into wanting to be a good accompanist. A lot of times, the opinions of other instrumentalists would intimidate me up to a point. It would intimidate me. It didn't stop me from being able to play well, but it intimidated me from playing what I wanted to play. So it kept me from playing as creatively as I would like to, as more or less the way I'm playing now, so to speak. You know.
Okay.
And Elvin had a lot to do with helping me to shed that, to get that away. To get that out of my mind. And Elvin used to say, there was two words that Elvin used he said not to let that bother you. You know what he said? Fuck them.
I'm gonna print that. I like that.
Well, that's what he said.
I like that.
Yeah.
Putting it succinctly, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So, man, don't be worried about what they want. You'd be like, good, man. Fuck them all.
And that's the way he plays too.
Absolutely.
I just saw him in San Francisco.
Oh God.
A couple of years ago. My son went. My 10-year-old and I went. And I got to tell you the story. It's real cute. Explain to them, you know.
Right.
But anyhow, Jack Adams was just
No.
Sam Woodger.
Oh, Sam and I, we were like kids together because we're both from Jersey. But Sam was old. Sam was like a big brother to me too. But in Jersey, like he influenced my beginning as a professional drummer. You know, he was like a big influence. We used to have a funny thing that we used to do. Sam used to always tell this story, man. There was 2 clubs, and they were like a block apart in Newark, New Jersey, that had live entertainment. They hired like quartets. So Sam was working in this one quartet, and I was working in another quartet up the street. And we used to get on our intermission, I would go down to Sam's gig, and Sam would come up to my gig, and we just stand around, you know. There was time to go back on, you know, and the band leader would come over to Sam and say, "Hey, man, you seen Charlie, man?" And Sam said, "No, I ain't seen it." And I said, "Man, what are you doing?" Sam said, "I ain't doing it." He said, "Man, come on, we want to come over here and play till Sam come back, until Charlie come back." And Sam said, "Okay." So Sam would go play my gig. And I would be down at his gig, standing around, and they would say, "Charlie, you seen Sam?" I said, "No." I said, "Man, well, you want to come play?" And we ended up playing each other's gig, man. And we did that to the band leaders. It took a long time before they got on to what we were doing, man.
When did he die?
Sam died, well, it's been a couple of years now.
We're almost to the end here. Max Roach.
Oh, yeah, well, Max is, you know, he was like, you know, the man. You know, something about Max that, even though Art Blakey and all the other drummers, you know, Roy Haynes, and they were all of the same. There's something about Max had a thing. He's not superior, but like, I don't know. There's something about Max. Maybe it's his character or something, but it just kind of puts him like a little up on top of the other drummers for some reason. I don't know why. Because as I say, he didn't have what Art had. He didn't have what Philly had, but he had. I don't know. And that's why I always looked at Max. I mean, even though there's other things about drumming that I liked that Max wasn't doing, but what I liked, but what Max was doing, what I loved so much, still, you know. And we became. I was very flattered, and to this day I'm very flattered that Max and I are good friends. Max has been a lot of help to me as far as Gretsch is concerned. He did the liner notes for my very first big band album. So,
That's great.
Yeah.
How about Philly Joe? Talk about him.
Philly and I were real good buddies. Really, really good buddies. And he was a nice influence on me too. And I was always a big fan. See, I was always very flattered that all these drummers that we talked about that I know. I was always, these were like becoming friends with these drummers is like very good for my confidence and ego too, because I knew none of these people had anything to do with me if they didn't like the way I played, you know. And so it was like a nice confidence booster. And they're all nice men as well. Nice men. If they did any harm, they only did it to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well put. Jimmie Cobb.
Same type of man. You know, I knew Jimmie for quite some time. I kind of, for some reason or other, Jimmie's playing never seemed to thrill me as much as some of the other drummers we talked about. But I don't mean that to denigrate him, you know. I don't mean that derisively. It's just a matter, you know, he might feel the same way about me. I don't know.
Tony Wayne.
The young genius. That's, you know, when I first heard Tony, you know, that's what I said. He's the next genius. You know, each era we have one, you know. He was. Because he really influenced that next era of drums. He really influenced. And he's still doing it.
Chico Hamilton.
Chico is one of the greatest producers. You know, Chico has made. You know, I don't want to label Chico as playing as bullshit because it's not really, but he's kind of like in that kind of same mode as Papa Joe. He's very theatrical, and he knows how to present like what you might say like an almost minimal amount of ability. He knows how to present it so that it comes out like it's a maximum amount of ability, and he does it with great gusto and confidence, and it ends up being cool.
Is he still with us?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Chico, I went to hear his new group at Metropolis Club where I played about 3 or 4 months ago.
This is great.
Yeah, my
I
friend.
appreciate
I'm glad
you doing
enjoyed.
this.